Ambassador Park Ji-woo stood in the center of the Galactic Assembly Hall and felt small. The chamber was massive, built to hold representatives from 300 different species. Above him, floating platforms carried the council members who ruled the galaxy. Their seats glowed with different colors, each representing an empire that had existed for thousands of years. Park wore his formal uniform, dark blue with the Earth symbol on his chest. He had given the same speech 13 times before. Nobody ever listened. "Honorable Council," Park began, his voice steady despite his frustration. "I come before you again to report illegal mining operations in human territory. The Vrakon Empire has placed 7 mining stations in the Kuiper Belt without permission from Earth. This violates the Treaty of First Contact, Article 12, Section..." A deep rumbling sound cut him off. Councillor Vrax, a massive reptilian creature from the Vrakon Empire, was laughing. His scales reflected the chamber lights as his body shook with amusement. "The human speaks of territory," Vrax said, his voice like grinding stones. "Your species has been in space for less than 50 years. The Vrakon Empire has claimed mining rights in that region for 3,000 years. We were harvesting asteroids when your ancestors were living in caves." Other council members made sounds that might have been agreement. The crystalline being from the Luminous Collective chimed softly, which Park had learned meant approval. Park's jaw tightened. "With respect, Counselor, the treaty clearly states..." "The treaty," another voice interrupted, high and musical, "was written as a courtesy to welcome humanity into civilized space. It was not meant to give you equal standing with ancient civilizations." Park looked up at the speaker, a floating creature covered in luminescent membranes. He did not know which species it belonged to, but he knew the attitude well. He had encountered it in every meeting, every negotiation, every attempt to protect human interests. "I see," Park said quietly. "Then Earth formally requests that the Council review the treaty terms, as we clearly misunderstood our rights as Assembly members." Vrax laughed again. "Request denied. This Council has more important matters than human complaints. You may go." Park stood there for a moment longer, anger burning in his chest. Then he turned and walked out of the chamber, his footsteps echoing in the vast space. 3 days later, everything changed. Captain Han Doyen was reviewing supply reports aboard the UEN Indomitable when the emergency alert screamed through the ship. Every screen in his ready room turned red. The words "colony attack" flashed in huge letters. Han was out of his chair instantly. "Bridge, report!" "Captain, we're receiving distress signals from New Jeju Colony," his communications officer responded. "Multiple ships firing on the settlement. Orbital platforms destroyed. We're picking up. Sir, we're picking up massive casualties." Han ran to the bridge, his heart pounding. New Jeju was home to 40,000 people. His sister lived there with her family. The main view screen showed the feed from the colony. What Han saw made his blood turn cold. 3 Vrakon mining ships, each the size of a city, hovered above the settlement. Their mining lasers, designed to cut through asteroids, were carving through buildings. Explosions bloomed across the colony domes. Atmosphere vented into space in white plumes. "How many survivors?" Han asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The communications officer looked at him with tears in her eyes. "Preliminary reports say 12,000 dead, Captain. The Vrakon ships are still firing. Get me Admiral Choi. Now." Within minutes, Han was connected to the Admiral's office on Earth. Admiral Choi Minho looked older than Han remembered. The man had commanded Earth's Navy since first contact with alien species. He had spent decades trying to keep peace with civilizations that viewed humanity as children. "I've seen the reports," Choi said before Han could speak. "The Vrakon claim it was a navigational error. They say humans should not have built a colony in contested space." "Contested?" Han felt rage building in his chest. "That colony has existed for 15 years. There was no contest until they decided to murder our people." "I know," Choi said softly. "Captain, I need you to stand down. Do not approach the Vrakon ships. Do not engage. Sir, they're killing civilians. By the time you reach New Jeju, it will be over. I need you to trust me, Captain. Return to Earth orbit immediately. That is an order." Han wanted to argue, to scream, to do something other than run away while people died, but he was a military officer. He followed orders. "Yes, sir," he said. 2 weeks later, Park Ji-woo stood before the Galactic Assembly again. This time, President Kim Tae-jin stood beside him, along with Admiral Choi and Dr. Yoon Hana, Earth's chief scientist. The council members looked annoyed at the interruption to their scheduled proceedings. Ambassador Park, Councillor Vrax rumbled, we have already addressed the unfortunate incident at your colony. The matter is closed. The matter is not closed, Park said. His voice was different now, harder. 12,000 human beings are dead. Your ships murdered them. You offered no apology, no compensation, and no justice. We explained that it was a navigational error. You are lying, Park interrupted. Our records show your ships fired continuously for 6 hours. That is not a navigation error. That is a massacre. The council chamber erupted in shocked sounds. No junior species had ever spoken to a council member this way. President Kim stepped forward. He was a small man, barely taller than Park, but when he spoke, his voice carried weight. For 43 years, humanity has endured your contempt. You have violated our territory, stolen our resources, and dismissed our complaints. We tolerated this because we believed in the possibility of peaceful cooperation. We believed the Galactic Assembly represented something noble. Kim paused, looking up at each council member in turn. We were wrong. The Assembly does not serve justice. It serves the powerful. You believe humanity is too weak to matter, too young to respect, too small to fear. Vrax leaned forward on his platform. Are you threatening the council, human? No, Kim said quietly. I am informing you that as of this moment, humanity withdraws from the Galactic Assembly. We reject your authority, your treaties, and your protection. You cannot survive without the Assembly, the crystalline, luminous representative chimed. Your species will be isolated, vulnerable to any empire that wishes to claim your worlds. Kim smiled, and there was something in that smile that made several council members shift uncomfortably. You believe we have spent 4 decades doing nothing but accepting insults? You think we have been idle while you laughed at us? Kim's voice grew stronger. Humanity has been preparing. We have built weapons you do not understand, using strategies you cannot imagine. We have studied every species in this assembly, learned your weaknesses, and planned for this day. Admiral Choi stepped forward. The Galactic Assembly has crossed the line. You attacked our colony. You killed our people. You offered no justice. Park Ji-woo delivered the final words, speaking clearly so every species could hear. Humanity declares war. The council chamber fell silent. Then Vrax began laughing again, and other council members joined him. The idea that humanity, barely 50 years in space, could threaten civilizations thousands of years old was absurd. You are making a grave mistake, Vrax said between laughs. The Vrakon Empire alone could crush your entire species in a month. Perhaps, Admiral Choi said. But I do not think so. The human delegation turned and walked out of the chamber. Behind them, the council members laughed and discussed how quickly they would destroy the impudent humans. None of them noticed Park's final words, whispered to Kim as they left. They have no idea what is coming. Far from the Galactic Assembly, in the dark spaces between stars, something massive powered up for the first time. Captain Han Doyen stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and watched as 200 human warships emerged from hidden shipyards. Every vessel was equipped with weapons no other species had ever seen. The United Earth Navy had spent 43 years preparing for this moment. Now finally they were going to show the galaxy what humanity could do. The war had begun. The Vrakon military station at Kepler 442 had existed for 2,000 years. Its shields could withstand the blast from a dying star. Its weapons could destroy planets. Commander Valth had commanded the station for 3 centuries and considered it the safest posting. In the Vrakon Empire, that changed when 30 human ships appeared from nowhere. Valth was reviewing mining reports when the alarm sounded. His second officer rushed to his platform. Commander, we have unknown vessels approaching at combat speed. They match the configuration of human warships. Valth made a dismissive gesture with his massive, clawed hand. 30 ships? Raise shields and broadcast the standard warning. Tell them to leave immediately or face destruction. The second officer hesitated. Sir, they are not responding to hails. And they are not slowing down. Then destroy them. What happened next would be analyzed by military strategists for generations. The human fleet did not approach in the traditional formation used by every civilized species for thousands of years. They did not request a formal battle schedule. They did not send champions to fight honor duels before the main engagement. They simply attacked. Captain Han Doyen stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and watched his tactical display. Every ship in his fleet was exactly where it needed to be. All ships weapons-free. Fire at will. The space around Kepler 442 station exploded with light. Human railguns firing solid metal slugs at incredible speeds hammered into the station's shields. The Vrakon shields designed to absorb energy weapons flickered and failed under the kinetic impacts. Valth stared in disbelief as his shields collapsed in seconds. That is impossible. Their weapons are primitive. Sir, they are using solid projectiles, not energy weapons. Our shields are not calibrated for... The station shuddered as the first railgun slugs punched through the armor. Explosions bloomed across multiple decks. Valth activated the station's main weapons. Massive plasma cannons that had destroyed hundreds of ships over the centuries. But the human ships were not where the targeting systems expected them to be. They moved in 3 dimensions using thrust patterns that seemed random, but were actually carefully coordinated. The plasma bolts missed, and the humans kept firing. Commander Lee Sora watched from the bridge of her stealth destroyer, the Shadow of Earth. Her ship was smaller than the others, designed for a different kind of warfare. While the main fleet kept the station busy, she had a more important mission. Take us in, she ordered. Activate the stealth systems. Her ship vanished from sensors. The technology was simple, really. Human scientists had studied how different species detected ships in space and built systems to defeat each method. The Shadow of Earth was coated in materials that absorbed radar. It ran cold to avoid thermal detection. It emitted no electromagnetic signals. To the Vrakon sensors, it did not exist. Lee guided her ship past the battle and toward the 3 supply depots orbiting nearby moons. Each depot held enough fuel and ammunition to supply Vrakon fleets for months. Launch missiles, Lee said calmly. Nuclear-tipped missiles, an ancient human weapon that other species had abandoned as crude, streaked toward the depots. The Vrakon had no defense against them because nobody had used such weapons in warfare for millennia. The 3 depots vanished in brilliant flashes. Lee smiled. Target the repair yards next. Back on the main station, Valth realized he was losing. Half his weapons were destroyed. His shields were gone. Human ships surrounded him like predators circling wounded prey. Send a distress signal to the Empire. Tell them, the Indomitable's main railgun fired one last time. The massive slug tore through the station's core reactor. Valth had just enough time to understand that humans did not fight like civilized species before the explosion consumed him. Captain Han watched the station break apart. He felt no satisfaction, only grim determination. Status report. 3 ships damaged, no losses. The station is destroyed, and Commander Lee reports all supply depots eliminated. Good. Set course for the next target. We have 20 more stations to destroy before the Vrakon Empire realizes what is happening. On Earth, General Bae Junho stood in the orbital drop bay and addressed 10,000 Marines. They wore heavy armor, each suit equipped with thrusters, weapons, and enough supplies to fight for a week without resupply. Listen up. Bae's voice echoed through the bay. We're about to do something no human has done before. We're going to take a planet away from the Vrakon Empire. He pulled up a hologram of their target, a world called Vrakon 7, home to 3 million Vrakon civilians and 50,000 military personnel. The Navy will get us into orbit. Then we drop. No shuttles, no landing craft. We go down in pods fast and hard, right on top of their military installations. The Vrakon have shields that stop ships and missiles, but they do not have shields that stop us. A young Marine raised her hand. Sir, what if the drop pods are shot down? They will shoot at us, Bae admitted. Some pods will be hit, but there will be so many of us falling so fast that most of us will make it. Once we are on the ground, we do what humans do best. We fight. 3 days later, Bae stood in his drop pod as the ship shook around him. Through the small window, he could see Vrakon 7 growing larger. The planet was beautiful, covered in red forests and silver oceans. 30 seconds to drop, the computer announced. Bae checked his rifle one last time. The weapon fired chemical propellant bullets, another ancient human technology. It was simple, reliable, and required no advanced power source. Perfect for extended ground combat. 10 seconds, Bae closed his eyes and thought about the people who died at New Jeju. His brother had lived there. Drop. The pod exploded from the ship like a bullet from a gun. Bae was pressed back into his seat as the pod accelerated toward the planet. Around him, 9,999 other pods fell like deadly rain. The Vrakon defense systems fired frantically. Energy beams and missiles lanced upward. destroying dozens of pods. But there were too many targets falling too fast. The defensive fire was like trying to stop a waterfall with a cup. Bay's pod hit the atmosphere and everything turned red. The heat shield glowed white-hot. The pod shook so violently Bay's teeth rattled. Then the drogue chutes deployed and the shaking stopped. Through the window, Bay saw the ground rushing up. He saw Vracon soldiers running toward defensive positions, their energy weapons charging. They were forming up in neat ranks, preparing to fight in the traditional way. They had no idea what was coming. The pod's retro rockets fired at the last second, slowing the descent just enough. Then Bay hit the ground with a crash that rattled his bones. The pod's sides exploded outward and he was running before the smoke cleared. All around him, thousands of other Marines emerged from their pods. They did not form neat ranks. They scattered, taking cover behind rocks and trees and the wreckage of their own pods. They moved in small teams, covering each other, advancing under fire. The Vracon soldiers fired their energy weapons, bright bolts that could burn through armor. But the Marines did not stand still. They used cover, moved constantly, and fired back with their simple rifles. Vracon Commander Thax watched in horror as his defensive line collapsed in minutes. His soldiers were excellent warriors, but they had trained for formal battles against equally formal opponents. They did not know how to fight against enemies who attacked from every direction, who refused to follow any rules, who seemed to appear from nowhere and vanish just as quickly. Fall back to the secondary positions, Thax ordered, but there were no secondary positions. The humans had dropped pods directly on top of those locations too. Marines were already behind Vracon lines, cutting communication cables, destroying supply depots and spreading chaos. Thax realized with growing dread that his entire military base would fall within hours. These humans fought like nothing he had ever seen. They were brutal, efficient, and terrifyingly effective. General Bay advanced with his command team, clearing buildings one by one. His rifle barked constantly, dropping Vracon soldiers who were too shocked to respond effectively. "Sir," one of his sergeants called out, "we have secured the command center. The Vracon commander is requesting terms of surrender." Bay nodded. "Tell him his soldiers will be treated as prisoners of war according to human military law. Any soldier who surrenders will not be harmed. But make sure he understands something else." "What is that, sir?" "This planet now belongs to humanity, and we are just getting started." Dr. Yoon Hana stood in her laboratory deep beneath the Gobi Desert and smiled at her life's work. Around her, hundreds of scientists and engineers worked on projects that would have seemed like magic to earlier generations. "Dr. Yoon," her assistant called out. "Admiral Choi is on the line." Yoon picked up the communicator. "Admiral, good timing. I have the results from the latest tests." "Tell me good news, Doctor." "Better than good. The new ship designs are ready for production. We can build them 3 times faster than traditional methods, and they are superior to anything in the galaxy. Our computer systems are generations ahead of assembly technology. Our manufacturing can produce 1 warship in the time it takes them to build a shuttle." She pulled up data on her screen. "The galaxy has been technologically stagnant for thousands of years, Admiral. They reached a certain level and stopped innovating." The Coalition fleet gathered at the edge of Proxima Centauri, like a swarm of angry insects. 312 warships from 5 different species, each vessel bristling with weapons developed over thousands of years. The Vracon provided the heavy cruisers, massive and powerful. The Luminous brought their crystal ships that could bend light itself. 3 smaller species contributed fast attack craft and support vessels. Coalition Commander Vrex stood on the bridge of the flagship Eternal Glory and felt confident. No force this large had been assembled in 5 centuries. The humans, with their mere 80 ships, would be crushed like insects. "All ships report ready," his tactical officer announced. "The human fleet is detected at the inner system. They are not running." Vrex made a rumbling laugh. "Of course they are not running. They do not understand what they face. Begin the attack. Follow Protocol 7 standard formation. We will destroy them properly, as civilized species wage war." The Coalition fleet moved forward in perfect formation, ships arranged in neat rows organized by size and firepower, energy shields glowing at maximum power. It was beautiful, ancient, and completely wrong for fighting humans. Captain Han Doyun watched the Coalition approach on his tactical display. 80 human ships faced over 300 alien vessels. The odds looked terrible. But Han was smiling. "They are using Protocol 7, his tactical officer reported, sounding amazed. "Standard formation, predictable approach vectors, shields configured for energy weapons." "Just as we expected," Han said. They learned nothing from Kepler 442. All ships execute Battle Plan Delta. Show them what human warfare really looks like. The human fleet scattered. No neat formations, no predictable patterns. Each ship moved independently, yet somehow they were perfectly coordinated. They had practiced this maneuver 1,000 times. The coalition fleet fired first. Massive energy beams lanced through space, bright enough to blind. Plasma bolts the size of buildings streaked toward human ships. It was an overwhelming display of firepower that should have vaporized the human fleet. But the humans were not where the coalition aimed. They jinked and weaved, using thrust patterns that made no sense to species that fought in straight lines. The coalition's weapons, designed for fighting predictable opponents, missed again and again. Then the humans returned fire. Railgun slugs, moving at a significant fraction of light speed, hammered into coalition shields. The shields, designed to deflect energy, flickered and failed under the kinetic impacts. A luminous crystal ship shattered into 1,000,000 pieces as a railgun slug punched through its core. A Vrek'Khan heavy cruiser's shields collapsed and a follow-up shot tore it in half. "What is happening?" Vrex demanded. "Why are our shields failing?" "Sir, they are using primitive kinetic weapons." "Our shields are not—" The Eternal Glory shuddered as something hit it. Warning alarms screamed across the bridge. On the human carrier Defiant, Captain An Jiyan watched her fighter pilots launch. 50 small craft streaked from the carrier's bays, each one carrying a pilot who had trained for this moment their entire life. Lieutenant Shin Do-hyun led the 77th Tactical Wing into battle. His fighter was tiny compared to the massive capital ships, but it was fast and agile in ways the aliens could not match. "All wings, break by pairs and engage enemy bombers," Shin ordered. The coalition had launched their own fighters, massive armored craft that looked more like small ships than fighters. They moved in tight formations, protecting each other with overlapping fire. Shin did not attack the formation head-on. Instead, he came in from above, diving at an angle that put the sun behind him. His wingman stayed with him, perfectly positioned. It was a tactic called the Thok Weave, developed by human pilots centuries ago. The coalition fighters tried to track him, but their formation made them slow. Shin fired his missiles and peeled away before they could respond. Behind him, 3 alien fighters exploded. "Sir, they are breaking formation to pursue," his wingman called. "Let them come. Lead them into the kill zone." Shin led the pursuing fighters straight toward a group of human bombers that looked like easy targets. The coalition pilots followed eagerly, not noticing the other 2 human fighter wings waiting in ambush. The trap closed. Coalition fighters died by the dozens. Those who survived broke off and retreated, their neat formation shattered. Captain An watched the fighter battle unfold and nodded with satisfaction. "Launch second wave. Focus on their capital ships." Aboard a coalition battleship, Specialist Oh Seung-jae and his team of combat engineers moved through the ventilation system like ghosts. They had infiltrated the ship 3 days ago, smuggled aboard a captured supply vessel. Now they crawled through spaces too small for the massive Vrek'Khan crew. "Plant the charges here," Oh whispered, marking spots on his team's tactical display. "Set timers for 30 minutes. We need to be off this ship before it blows." His team worked quickly and silently. They placed explosive charges next to critical systems throughout the ship. Power conduits, computer cores, life support junctions. When these charges exploded, the battleship would be crippled. "Sir, I am picking up patrols in the next section," one of his team reported. "Then we go around. Stay quiet, stay hidden. We are not here to fight. We are here to sabotage." They planted the last charge and began working their way back to the hangar bay, where they had hidden a small escape craft. Oh checked his timer. 25 minutes until the charges blew. They almost made it. A Vrek'Khan engineer spotted them when they were 3 corridors from the hangar. The alien let out a roar and reached for his communicator. Oh did not hesitate. His rifle barked 3 times and the Vrek'Khan fell. But the damage was done. Alarms began blaring throughout the ship. "Run," Oh ordered. They sprinted through the corridors, Vrek'Khan soldiers pouring out behind them. Oh's team laid down covering fire, buying seconds. They reached the hangar and dove into their escape craft. "Go, go, go." The craft launched just as Vrek'Khan security teams burst into the hangar. Energy bolts splashed against the craft's shields. Then they were in space, accelerating away from the battleship. O counted down in his head. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The battleship exploded from within. Secondary explosions rippled across its hull as the charges O's team planted, set off ammunition stores and fuel tanks. The massive vessel broke apart, spilling thousands of Raycon into space. Another one down, O said grimly. On to the next target. Back in the main battle, the coalition was falling apart. Their neat formations were shattered. Their shields were failing. Human ships swarmed around the alien vessels like wolves attacking a herd. Commander Vreck stared at his tactical display in disbelief. Half his fleet was gone. The humans had lost only 12 ships. This was not how wars were supposed to be fought. This was not civilized. All ships, retreat, Vreck ordered. Fall back to secondary positions. But there was no organized retreat. Ships fled in every direction, abandoning formation and discipline. Human fighters pursued them, picking off stragglers. It was not a battle anymore. It was a rout. Captain Han watched the coalition fleet break and run. He felt no joy in victory, only cold satisfaction. The galaxy needed to learn this lesson. All ships cease pursuit. Let them go. Let them tell their leaders what happened here today. On Earth, Counselor Cha Young-soo met with representatives from 3 minor alien species in a secret location. These species had been part of the Galactic Assembly, but they were not part of the coalition. They were smart enough to stay neutral. What you have witnessed at Proxima Centauri changes everything, Cha said. The old order is crumbling. The species that dominated the galaxy for thousands of years are vulnerable. The 3 alien representatives exchanged glances. One of them, a small floating creature, spoke in chiming tones that Cha's translator converted to words. If we support humanity, the coalition will destroy us. If you support the coalition, humanity will remember, Cha replied. But if you remain neutral and perhaps share intelligence with us when this war is over, humanity will ensure you have a voice in the new order. Another representative, a creature covered in soft fur, leaned forward. What makes you think humanity will win? The coalition has thousands of ships, because the coalition fights the old way. They follow protocols that are thousands of years old. They believe warfare should be civilized and predictable. Humanity learned long ago that war is neither civilized nor predictable. War is about winning. Cha pulled up footage from the Battle of Proxima. The 3 representatives watched in silence as the coalition fleet was torn apart. Join us, Cha said quietly, or at least do not stand in our way. The galaxy is changing, and you must decide which side of history you want to be on. The representatives left without making promises, but Cha knew they would think carefully about what they had seen. Fear and respect could be more powerful than ancient alliances. Admiral Choi Min-ho sat in his office on Earth and reviewed the battle reports. Proxima Centauri was a stunning victory, but it came with costs. 12 ships destroyed, 43 damaged, over 2,000 casualties. He looked at the list of names. Each one was a person who would never go home. People who died so humanity could survive. Admiral, Dr. Yoon's voice came through his communicator. I have the casualty reports from the medical ships. The numbers they are difficult. Medical Officer Lim Seo-hyun moved through the hospital ship's corridors with practiced efficiency. Her white uniform was spotted with blood, and exhaustion made every step heavy. She had been operating for 16 hours straight. Dr. Lim, we have another emergency in Bay 3, a nurse called out. Lim nodded and changed direction. In Bay 3, a young Marine lay on the surgical table. His left arm was gone, vaporized by a Vracon energy weapon. Burns covered half his body. He was 19 years old. What is his name? Lim asked as she scrubbed her hands. Private Hwang Minwoo. He was part of the landing force on Vracon 7. Lim looked down at the boy's face. He was unconscious, mercifully. She had saved hundreds like him over the past months. Young soldiers who joined the military to see the stars and ended up broken and bleeding on her table. Let us get to work, she said quietly. 3 hours later, Private Hwang was stable. He would live, but his fighting days were over. Lim stood by his bed and watched him sleep. She thought about all the others like him, filling hospital ships across human space. They were winning the war. But at what cost? Sergeant Kang Jamin sat in the mess hall of the assault carrier Vengeance and stared at his food without eating. Around him, other Marines talked and laughed, but Kang felt disconnected from them. He had fought in the first battles. He had been part of the Kepler 442 assault, had dropped onto Vrecon 7, had boarded enemy ships. He had killed more aliens than he could count. His superiors praised him. His fellow soldiers respected him. But something was wrong. 2 days ago, Kang's unit had participated in the orbital bombardment of a Vrecon military world. The target was a weapons factory and training center, but there had been a civilian city nearby. The blast from the bombardment destroyed the military target and killed thousands of civilians. Collateral damage, his commander said. Unavoidable in war. But Kang kept seeing the aftermath images. Vrecon children pulled from rubble. Families vaporized in an instant. Were they so different from the families killed at New Jeju? "You okay, Sergeant?" a young Marine asked, sitting down across from him. "Yeah," Kang lied. "Just tired. I heard we are hitting another Vrecon world next week. Going to make them pay for what they did to us." Kang nodded but said nothing. He understood revenge. But was there a point where revenge became something darker? When did justice turn into the same brutality that started the war? He did not have answers. But the questions kept him awake at night. Diplomat Jong Eunji sat in a small room on a neutral space station, facing 3 alien representatives. They came from species that belonged to the Galactic Assembly, but were not part of the coalition fighting humanity. "My government is authorized to discuss terms," Jong said carefully. "But we need to understand what you are offering." The lead representative, a tall being covered in feathers, spoke through a translator device. "Several assembly species believe this war is wrong. The attack on New Jeju violated fundamental assembly laws. The coalition's response has been excessive and wasteful. So you want to help humanity? We want to end the war. Too many are dying on both sides. The old system was corrupt, but burning down the galaxy is not the answer." Jong studied the 3 aliens. Were they sincere, or was this a trap? She had to be careful. "What specifically can you offer?" "Intelligence on coalition fleet movements. Economic support to offset the costs of war. Most importantly, political pressure within the assembly. If enough species refuse to support the coalition, they will be forced to negotiate. And what do you want in return?" The feathered being leaned forward. "A promise that when this war ends, humanity will not become what the Vrecon Empire was. We do not want to trade one tyrant for another." Jong met the alien's eyes. "I cannot make promises on behalf of all humanity. But I can tell you that we did not start this war. We only wanted to be treated fairly. If the galaxy offers us respect and justice, we will offer the same in return." The meeting continued for hours. When it ended, Jong was not sure if she had made progress or walked into a trap. But she reported everything to Earth and hoped for the best. Captain Song Min-seok stood on the bridge of the defense platform orbiting Titan and watched the Vrecon fleet approach. 47 ships, all heavily armed, all coming to destroy the colony his platform protected. "Sir, we have 15 defense platforms and 8 ships against their 47, his tactical officer said. "We should evacuate the colony and fall back." "No," Song said firmly. "Every colony we lose makes Earth more vulnerable. We hold here." He opened a channel to all human forces in the system. "This is Captain Song. The Vrecon are coming to take Titan because they want revenge. They want to prove that humans can be beaten. We are going to prove them wrong." Song had spent 3 months preparing for this moment. Titan's orbital space was filled with mines, sensor drones, and hidden weapons platforms. The approaches were covered by overlapping fields of fire. Every ship had escape routes and fallback positions planned. All units weapons-free. Make every shot count. The Vrecon fleet entered the system in their traditional formation, confident in their numbers. Song waited until they were deep in the minefield before giving the order. "Detonate." Space erupted with explosions. Hundreds of mines, simple devices with chemical explosives and metal shrapnel, tore into the Vrecon formation. Shields designed to stop energy weapons shattered under the primitive but effective weapons. 3 Vrecon ships were destroyed immediately. 5 more were damaged. The formation broke apart as ships tried to evade the mines. All platforms fire. The defense platforms, massive stations with railguns and missile batteries opened up. Song's ships joined in, hitting the Vrecon from multiple angles. The battle became a chaotic melee, with ships fighting at close range where the humans' maneuvering advantage was strongest. A Vrecon cruiser got through the defenses and fired on Song's platform. The blast tore through the shields and ripped open 2 decks. Warning alarm screamed. "Damage report. We have lost weapons batteries 3 and 4. Hull breach on Deck 7, but we are still operational. Song gritted his teeth. Keep firing! The battle lasted for 18 hours. It was brutal, desperate, and costly. When it finally ended, the Vrakon fleet limped away, leaving behind 14 destroyed ships. The humans had lost 3 defense platforms and 2 ships. Song stood in the damaged bridge and looked at the casualty reports. 437 dead, but Titan still stood. The colony survived. Sir, his communications officer said quietly, we are receiving a transmission from the Vrakon fleet commander. He says we fought well. Song almost laughed, almost. Tell him that next time. They should not attack at all. On Vrakon Prime, Agent Nam Hyunwoo crouched in the ventilation shaft above the asteroid tug facility and watched the engineers work below. The Vrakon were preparing a massive asteroid, 3 kilometers across, to launch toward Earth. Nam had sent his warning to Earth, but he knew it would not be enough. Even if Earth's defenses could stop the asteroid, thousands might die in the attempt. He had to sabotage the operation here now. The problem was simple. Nam was one person with limited weapons facing a facility protected by hundreds of Vrakon soldiers. If he attacked openly, he would die within seconds, so Nam would not attack openly. He had spent 2 days studying the facility, learning its routines, identifying its weaknesses. Now he moved through the ventilation system toward the main computer core. If he could corrupt the navigation systems, the asteroid would miss Earth entirely. Getting to the computer core meant crawling through 300 meters of narrow shafts, bypassing security systems and avoiding detection by thermal sensors. Nam wore a special suit that masked his heat signature, but it was not perfect. If he made one mistake, alarms would trigger. He reached the core access point and carefully removed the vent cover. Below him was a room full of computer equipment, unguarded because the Vrakon believed it was secure. Nam dropped silently into the room and pulled out his portable hacking device. Human computer technology was decades ahead of Vrakon systems. The device connected to the core and began working, bypassing security protocols and rewriting code. 30 seconds. That was how long Nam had calculated he could work before the system detected the intrusion. 20 seconds. The navigation code was complex, but Nam's device was designed for this task. It found the right files and began corrupting them. 10 seconds. Almost done. Just a few more lines of code to change. 5 seconds. The alarm went off. Nam grabbed his device and ran. Behind him, doors burst open and Vrakon soldiers poured into the room. Energy weapons fired, bolts of superheated plasma that scorched the walls where Nam had been standing. He dove back into the ventilation shaft and crawled as fast as he could. The soldiers could not follow, but they were sealing off exits. Nam had minutes, maybe less, to escape the facility. He reached an emergency exit that led to the outside and kicked the grating open. Cold air rushed in. Nam was 3 stories above the ground. No time for careful climbing. He jumped. His suit's emergency thrusters fired, slowing his fall just enough. Nam hit the ground hard, feeling something in his leg crack. Pain shot up his body, but adrenaline kept him moving. He limped toward the spaceport where he had hidden a small ship. Vrakon soldiers were everywhere now, searching for the intruder. Fleet Admiral Han Doyen stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and looked at the greatest fleet ever assembled by humanity. 250 warships, each one representing humanity's best technology and determination. Around him floated ships from 12 other species, former assembly members who had joined Earth's cause. The Gateway Nexus lay ahead, a massive space station that controlled the hyperspace routes connecting half the galaxy. Whoever controlled the Nexus controlled galactic trade and communication. The last coalition holdouts, 3 species who refused peace, had fortified it with everything they had. Admiral, his tactical officer reported, we are detecting 187 enemy ships around the Nexus. They have anchored themselves to the station's shields. Fighting them will mean damaging the Nexus itself. Han nodded. He had expected this. The holdouts wanted to force humanity to destroy the Nexus, turning the galaxy against them. Open a channel to the enemy fleet. A Vrakon commander appeared on screen, his scales scarred from 100 battles. I am Fleet Admiral Han Doyen of the United Earth Navy. I am authorized to offer surrender terms. Power down your weapons, evacuate the Nexus, and your crews will be treated with respect under military law. This is your only warning. The Vrakon commander laughed, the sound harsh and bitter. You think we fear death, human? We are the last warriors of the old order. We will not surrender to a species that has existed in space for barely 50 years. Then you choose to die for nothing, Han said quietly. But know this. When your ships are destroyed, when your warriors are dead, the galaxy will remember that you had a choice. You could have chosen peace. Han closed the channel and turned to his fleet. All ships, this is Admiral Han. We did not want this battle. But we will finish it. Target their weapons and engines. If they surrender, we accept. If they fight, we end them. But we protect the Nexus. Those are our orders. The battle began with a coordinated strike unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships worked seamlessly with their alien allies, each species contributing their strengths. The Luminous bent light to blind enemy sensors. A species called the Tauren used their gravity weapons to pin enemy ships in place, and humanity used their devastating railguns and missiles to tear through defenses. The Coalition holdouts fought bravely. They were warriors from ancient civilizations, proud and skilled. But they fought like their ancestors had fought for thousands of years, following protocols and traditions that made them predictable. The human-led alliance fought to win. They used every advantage, every trick, every tactic that worked. When the enemy formed defensive lines, the humans broke them with overwhelming firepower from unexpected angles. When the enemy tried to retreat, fast attack craft cut off their escape. When the enemy tried to destroy the Nexus out of spite, Marine boarding teams stopped them. Lieutenant Shin Do-hyun led his fighter wing in one final mission. 3 Vracon ships were trying to ram the Nexus, willing to die if they could take the station with them. All fighters, target their engines. We stop them here. His wing dove toward the Vracon ships, dodging defensive fire. Shin's missiles streaked through space and slammed into the first ship's engines. The massive vessel shuddered and began drifting off course. His wingmates destroyed the second ship's propulsion. That left one. Shin's fighter was out of missiles. His railgun had ammunition for maybe 10 more seconds of fire. The Vracon ship was seconds from impact with the Nexus. This is Lieutenant Shin. I am going in. Shin, no. His commander's voice shouted through the radio. You will not survive. The Nexus will. Shin pushed his fighter to maximum acceleration, pointing straight at the Vracon ship's bridge. At the last second, he fired his railgun, emptying his ammunition into the enemy ship's command center. Then his fighter impacted the Vracon vessel's hull. The explosion was small compared to the massive ships around it, but it was enough. The Vracon ship's navigation failed. It drifted past the Nexus, missing by less than a kilometer. On the Indomitable, Han watched Shin's fighter disappear from his tactical display. One more sacrifice, one more name to add to the memorial, but the Nexus was safe. The battle ended 6 hours later. The Coalition holdouts were destroyed or surrendered. The Gateway Nexus remained intact. Humanity had won the final battle. 3 weeks later, Envoy Park Ji-woo stood in the rebuilt Galactic Assembly Hall. But this time everything was different. The old council's elevated platforms were gone, replaced by a circular table where representatives from 50 species sat as equals. This was the new Galactic Council, and humanity had earned its place through blood and determination. We gathered today to sign the Articles of Galactic Peace, Park announced. These articles replace the old Assembly's laws. They are based on principles that humanity learned through painful experience. Equity, not hierarchy. Mutual defense, not domination. Justice, not tradition. He looked around the table at representatives from species that had fought against humanity, and species that had fought with them. The war cost all of us dearly. Millions died. Worlds were scarred. Families were shattered. We cannot undo those losses, but we can ensure they were not in vain. Park activated a hologram that displayed the key provisions of the new treaty. Protection for all species regardless of age or power, fair trade agreements, mutual defense against external threats, and most importantly, a justice system that applied equally to everyone. Some of you fought against us, Park said, looking directly at a Vracon representative. Some of you fought with us. But today we all choose the same thing. Peace. Not because we are weak, but because we are strong enough to put down our weapons. The treaty was signed by all 50 species. When the ceremony ended, the Vracon representative approached Park. Ambassador Park, I must tell you something. Yes? I was part of the fleet that attacked New Jeju. I did not fire the weapons, but I was there. I followed orders that I should have questioned. And because of that, thousands of your people died. Park studied the alien's face. He saw genuine remorse there. What is your name? Rush, I cannot forgive you. That is not my place. The families who lost loved ones are the only ones who can offer forgiveness. But I can tell you this. The new council includes a tribunal to address war crimes committed by all sides. If you testify honestly about what happened at New Jeju, it will help bring closure to those families. Vrash nodded slowly. I will testify. It will likely mean punishment for me. Perhaps. But it is the right thing to do. Dr. Yoon Hana stood in a laboratory that was no longer secret, surrounded by scientists from a dozen species. They were working together on a joint project to develop medical technology that could help the war's wounded. Dr. Yoon, a Lumenis scientist, chimed, your proposal for regenerative tissue growth is remarkable. If we combine it with our crystalline matrix technology, we could regrow entire limbs. Yoon smiled. Then let us try. The galaxy has seen enough of what we can destroy. Time to show what we can build together. The collaboration was awkward at first. Species that had fought each other months ago now had to trust each other with their most advanced technology. But slowly barriers broke down. Scientists cared about discovery, not politics. They found common ground in their shared desire to heal and create. Within a year, the joint research produced medical advances that saved millions of lives across dozens of species. Human innovations in computer technology combined with alien expertise in energy manipulation and biological sciences created a renaissance of advancement. President Kim Tae-jin, finishing his final term in office, watched the changes with satisfaction. The war had been terrible, but its aftermath was transforming the galaxy in ways he had never imagined. His successor, President-elect Choi Min-ho, the former admiral who had led humanity's military to victory, was already planning the future. We won the war, Choi told Kim during the transition meeting. Now we must win the peace. That will be harder. Yes, Kim agreed. But I believe humanity is ready. We learned that strength without wisdom is tyranny. We must never forget that lesson. On Vrekon Prime, something unprecedented happened. A delegation from New Jeju arrived at the memorial for Vrekon soldiers who died in the war. Among the delegation was a woman named Park Min-ha, whose daughter had died in the attack that started the war. She met with a Vrekon widow, whose husband had died at the Battle of Proxima. The two stood together in silence, two people from different species who had both lost everything to the war. I do not know if I can forgive, Park Min-ha said quietly, but I know that hating you will not bring my daughter back. The Vrekon widow made a gesture of respect. My mate died believing he was defending our empire. Now I wonder if he died for nothing. Your people taught us that strength alone does not make an empire great. Justice and mercy also matter. They stood together at the memorial, not friends but no longer enemies. It was a small moment, but it represented something larger. The galaxy was healing. Captain Song Min-seok, promoted to Commandant of the United Galaxy Naval Academy, taught his students from a dozen species. Human, Vrekon, Lumenis, and others sat in the same classroom learning the same lessons. Warfare is about more than weapons, Song told his students. It is about understanding your enemy and yourself.